who has been left to guard it turns round and he says, "You have chosen wisely." Particularly pertinent because of somebody's blog this week.
Excellent. Oh, thank you. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good day from wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download.
What is the Digital Download, Rob?
The Digital Download is the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Today we're asking, what is your internal marketing plan? We have a special guest, Kerry-Ann Stimpson, to help us sort it all out. We'll talk with Kerry-Ann about internal marketing. What do we mean by it? Why is it important? And if it is important, how do we get leadership buy-in? But before we bring Kerry-Ann on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you, the audience, go and reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the Digital Download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. Right, so introductions. Alex, would you kick us off, please?
I would. Refer a friend. I like that. Hello all. Alex Abbott, founder of Sapiro and proud DLA Ignite partner.
Alex, can I ask you a question?
You can.
What's that? Is that some sort of certificate behind you?
Yeah. This on the wall here.
Yeah.
Do you know what this is? The DLA Ignite ISP endorsed certificate for social selling and influence.
Excellent.
What,
wow.
like that?
Yeah.
Is it like that?
I think there's
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen one of those.
I think
We're not being self-promotional today.
I think there's only 3 in the world currently.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We're all on this show.
Thanks.
Rob and I have every intention of making it 5.
And to the audience,
that,
if
Alex.
anybody would like to be the 6th, drop me a
Adam.
DM.
Adam, would you introduce yourself?
I would be delighted to. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite and proud to have everyone on this call as a partner of DLA Ignite.
Good one.
Excellent. Thank you. Tim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite and really excited to be here and looking forward to seeing what the audience has to say as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Tracy.
Hey, everybody. I am Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, where we care about optimizing sales and marketing and the people behind the sales and marketing. And I, too, I gotta get like a list of words. I come here every day and I'm like, I need like off the top of my head, a thesaurus. What's another word for proud? Anybody? I'm also a proud partner of DLA Ignite.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Tracy. And myself, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale. And I, too, am a proud DLA Ignite partner. Although, as you can see, I am certificate-less.
Not for long.
Okay. Excellent.
Because for Alex, for Alex and Tim and myself, it only took a matter of months.
Well, there you go. All right. So, introductions. Thanks for that. Quick note, I want to introduce Kerry-Ann. However, I want to let her know it doesn't appear that her camera is on. So when you get a chance, I'll have you turn that on and we'll bring you on stage. In the interim, well, I'd like to at least do an introduction. So as I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Kerry-Ann Stimpson, a chief marketing officer by day, but her passion project is producing and hosting the internal marketing podcast. Let's try and bring her on. Kerry-Ann, we can't see you. I'm wondering, can we hear you? Hearing nothing as well.
No.
All right. So I'm going
Ooh,
to.
I'm stealing Andrew's. I'm going to be an exultant partner.
Yeah.
Can we bring up a couple of Andrew's comments? Please?
Exactly. While Kerry-Ann is trying to get online, let's multitask and do that. First and foremost, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you for that. And Tutoros. All right. Welcome. And Andrew says, like waiting for a bus, you see one certificate, then two more turn up right away. Excellent. And finally from Andrew, proud equals much pleased or exultant partner. Yes, I would say exultant will be what we'll be going with from now on. However, I question whether or not I'll even be able to remember the word exultant next week.
I wrote it down.
Excellent, good. So the good news is we did hear from Kerry-Ann, and she is in the process of exiting and rebooting. Oh, the joys of live broadcasts, right? In the meantime, let's vamp a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, Rob, you've got us. What more do you
Exactly.
need?
We have all the opinions, Rob.
Exactly. So, some of you have done more prep work than others for today's show. I just know this for a fact. Let me ask you, before we even have Kerry-Ann explain to us, what is your perception of internal marketing and an internal marketing plan?
Sounds like it's talking to yourself.
Is it,
Like
is
those
it,
voices
When
in my
nobody
head?
else shows up for your live show, Alex.
is it explaining to people what you do in marketing?
That could be. So here's my brochure. Please post it.
And give your brochure to the internal people so they know who you are.
We've got an event in 2 weeks or something like that, or
There you go.
telling people what's going on.
In a large company, your ability to PR yourself is crucial to get yourself seen and get yourself promoted, isn't it? One of the things we all know is if you sit around waiting for a pay rise, you're unlikely to get one. So the more you invest in telling people what you do, drawing them into what you do, getting them excited with what you do, the more beneficial it's going to be for you, surely.
Let's hold that thought. I'm going to bring Kerry-Ann on now.
Yay!
Yay! Good morning, Kerry-Ann, and welcome. So good to see you.
Oh my goodness, I'm very happy to be here. I was getting nervous a while ago, but
I'm glad it all worked
technology,
out.
right?
Exactly.
Hi,
So,
everybody.
Hi,
can
Kerry-Ann.
you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got here?
Sure. Well, first of all, I am coming to you from Kingston, Jamaica, where it's probably just as hot as where everybody is right now, based on what's going on in most parts of the world. So it is just after 8 o'clock here. So I'm Kerry-Ann Stimpson, of course. My day job is that I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of JMB Group. We are a Caribbean-based financial services group of companies headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica, of course, which is where I am born and raised. But my passion project, which is perhaps the primary reason why I'm here, is that I am the producer and host of my very own podcast. I'm an independent podcaster, and it's called the Internal Marketing Podcast. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now. It's not only a passion project, but it's a conversation that I'm very excited and always happy to have, and looking forward to having it with you and your awesome viewers.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So, Kerry-Ann, let me start with a basic question, similar to the question I rolled out to the group here. What do you mean by internal marketing? And is that different from external marketing? Is that different from internal communications?
Perfect question to start. So internal marketing is, as I like to say, it's the flip of external marketing, right? So it's really about marketing to your employees who are internal to the company. External marketing, you're marketing to your clients and prospective clients. Internal is to your employees. But the objective is almost the same, in the sense that what you're really trying to do when you're marketing to your employees is that you're trying to engage them in the brand, the mission, the vision, the purpose of the company, the products and the services, what makes you awesome. And the goal is not only to engage them, but to build that connection to the brand, with the hope that it does a number of things, that it not only makes them passionate about where they work, but it also motivates them to be advocates of the brand themselves. Because when you think about it, as marketers, we spend a lot of time trying to get folks to buy from us, which is great. But our employees, as the primary representatives or ambassadors of the brand, if they're not engaged, if they're not passionate about the brand, they can't spread the good word. And customers tend to believe the word of the employees who are on the inside, and they tend to believe the official marketing messages in your marketing channels. So again, it's really a great opportunity to engage and empower your employees to be advocates. And the slight difference between internal marketing and internal comms is that advocacy piece, so it's not just about engaging them in the company, the mission, the vision, the purpose, but it's engaging them to the point where they're motivated and empowered to be advocates on the outside. So that's the slight difference between internal marketing and internal comms, I'd say.
I have to ask, where are they advocating? How are they advocating? Because I've worked with a lot of companies before, and I've never been asked to be an advocate.
Right. So advocacy can happen in just about anywhere your employees are. So I think the most popular way, which we probably see a lot of on a platform like LinkedIn, is on social media. So whether we like it or not, our employees are posting stuff online. Whether it is they go on glassdoor.com and put your company on blast or say great things about the company, or they could be just creating content on a LinkedIn, on Twitter, where they talk about life at the company where they work, and they can say good or they can say not so good or very bad, quite frankly. And so that's where the most popular place of advocacy is. It's usually on social media, online. But the reality is our employees live and work many different places in their own sphere of influence. So it could be the tennis club, the supermarket, your parent teachers association, club meetings. I mean, those are the places where your employees are interacting with people in their own communities, in their own networks. Are we engaging and empowering them to speak well of the company that they work, so that the people in their networks would be endeared to the brand as well? So that's where advocacy typically occurs. It's anywhere your people are.
Can I just share a quick example of that? Because this is making me think of this one Christmas party. I was at like my husband's work Christmas party, and the departments kind of, I think there's a lot of workspaces where you're just kind of like, oh, this sucks and blah, blah. And I'm sitting there being like the spouse. And my husband looks over to me and he was like, oh, she wouldn't understand. She loves her job.
Okay.
And her company. And I was like, oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And it was even in that moment. So like I would come home and I would talk about like all of these, and not like nothing is perfect, right? But I would talk about all of these things that I enjoyed about my work. And so my husband knew that about me. And then he said that to a bunch of his, and then everyone was like, well, where do you work? And then I talk about it, right? And it's not because someone asked me. It's not like my CEO asked me to be an advocate of the company.
Yes,
it was because my experience of being in the company was good. So I shared it with people. I remember going to a job interview once because this local company was hiring and Lego was one of their clients. So I'm a huge Lego fan. So I'm like, I need to go. I need to go interview. And I was sitting there and I was telling all of these stories about the company that I worked for. And I was like, man, I don't want to go to a different company. I like working here. So I think it's those types of things. And when the company shows up intentionally and very minimally paying attention to those types of experiences we're creating for the employees, I think that's where advocacy begins.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you raised that example, Tracy, because advocacy can be formal. To Rob's question again, there are companies, a lot of companies, who are putting together formal advocacy or ambassador programs where they're training their employees how to build their personal brands online, giving them the tools and the power to be able to do that. And then there's just advocacy, like just what you said, at a cocktail party where you're just talking to someone, or in the dark social channels of the world, where there are lots of conversations happening that as a company you don't even see. Your people are talking, and how you're empowering them and motivating them just to be excited about where they work. That's our job, and that's what internal marketing helps to facilitate.
So you talk about that as if that's a common thing. Yeah, and my experience is that it isn't. My experience of advocacy and that concept of internal marketing is every bit as broken as my experience of seeing companies try to market. I've got a great product. I'm going to keep banging you in the face with my great product until eventually you go, oh, wow, now the scales have fallen from my eyes and now I see how brilliant it is. I want to buy it. And, so we've created an approved set of content which you can share on your social channels. Exactly. You're shaking your head. But for most,
I love the faces too.
Yeah. For most companies, that's their concept of advocacy. And, we see plenty of companies that operate in the same space as us that are going and saying to organizations, we will help you create employee advocacy programs. And it begins with marketing and brand, producing some approved content. And then we teach people how to share it, and we teach them how to top and tail it and personalize it for their audiences. And it's like Tim and I had hair like yours, and we've torn it out. We've torn it out through frustration because we see people investing not just the money, but massive amounts of effort in this. And we know from the moment that they say this is what we're going to do, we know it's going to be an abject failure because people don't behave that way. Kerry, you're my friend. I want to hear what you're doing. I don't want to hear what Tim has told you to tell me you're doing. And when companies can't grasp this idea because they want to protect the brand, they're doing more damage than good, aren't they?
Mic drop.
Wow. No, I'm feeling Adam's pain, and he's touched on probably. Thanks for the compliment, by the way. But Adam has touched on probably one of the most controversial points that I've been hearing on LinkedIn, certainly over the past 12 months. So before we even get into advocacy again, which is why I love talking about internal marketing, right? Because it starts from a place of making sure, first of all, that you have something to talk about. Your culture. What's the culture like working in your organization? Are your employees happy to be working there? Are they comfortable in their jobs? Do they feel sufficiently compensated for what they do? Do they feel valued? Is there solid leadership? All of those things have to be in place as the foundation before we even begin to talk about advocacy, right? So let's start there. Presuming that those things are in place, advocacy, as you rightly said, Adam, cannot come from a place of seeing your employees as walking, talking billboards. Because one of the key factors of successful marketing is authenticity. Are we truly being real, authentic about who we say we are? And if it just comes from a place of cutting and pasting and saying, okay, everybody, it's Wednesday, it's car loan month, at JMMB Bank, everybody, let's post about car loans. That's not authentic. And their communities know that. And they, as employees, don't resent. They actually, quite frankly, they resent being treated as those kinds of billboards. So again, it's how are you being authentic in how you're allowing your people to show up online and empowering them to do so. And so it's a controversial topic. I understand that companies are concerned about how their employees show up online. So they're really trying to put in the guardrails of what people can and cannot post. But the reality is that whether you like it or not, they're posting. They're going on Instagram to post, even if they're not posting it on LinkedIn. And it's a big, wide world of interaction. So first of all, make sure your people are happy. Once they're happy, empower them to speak, and the company brand brand will get to go along for the ride.
So what happens when they're not? Because you are an expert in this silo, this trench, and you know more than anyone does in this. So what happens when the company is desperate to create an advocacy program or advocates in their workforce, and people are not happy? People put a brave face on it and they smile. But you listed a whole load of things about, if the employees are empowered and enjoy their work and have good managers and have good leadership and feel that they're properly compensated. And I was just thinking, okay, but that's none. There's no company where that's the case. So
let's just, I'm sure there are. It's just not the majority.
No, of course there are. There are companies where people love them. And actually, Lego would be a good brand of an example of a company that does that. And it does give people purpose and they feel that they're part of the bigger whole. But
they feel like they're building something, don't they?
But aside from those one or two pinnacles of kind of engaged workforce and people that feel that they love the business that they're working for, most businesses they're machines for making money for some people within the corporate structure. And very rarely, in my experience, not just where I've worked, but all of the people that I know, very rarely do people feel that they are being paid their worth. Very rarely do they feel they have the autonomy that they deserve. Very rarely do they feel that they're not rammed into a pigeonhole which doesn't reflect the most authentic them or all elements of the most authentic them. They're not 100% aligned behind the leadership. And I know that the flippant comment is to say, we just leave and go somewhere that is. But actually, maybe 1 in 100 companies is all of those things. So how do you tackle that problem? And the company says, here's what we want. And you just go, yeah, you don't want that because of all these problems. How do you fix that?
Right. So when I talk about internal marketing being the flip of external, so when we talk about external marketing and we say, look, we want to target a particular customer segment, the first thing we do is we reach out to those customers to understand not only who they are, but what their needs are. What is it that they want that's not being fulfilled or what's not being adequately served by the competition, by way of an example. So it happens in the same way with internal marketing, in the sense that my first question to all leaders is dig into your employee base and understand what's missing for you where your people are concerned. So you want to do the research, you want to do the surveys and the focus groups among your employees to find out not only if they're happy working there, are they proud to work there? Do they feel comfortable talking about the fact that I work for company ABC and it's great? And yes, of course, you're going to ask those compensation questions if they feel that, if they feel comfortable with the leadership, but you also want to ask about their engagement in the brand. Do they believe that we walk the talk? Do they believe that we're delivering on the brand promise? Do they feel empowered to be able to deliver on the brand promise to the customer? Look at the results of that. It can be quite eye-opening because even as you talk about great brands like Lego, even Southwest Airlines, who obviously went through a tough time over the holiday season recently, but still as a very strong brand that's known to offer a great culture, you see it come out in the performance of the company. When you have happy, engaged team members, the customers pick it up. Similarly, they pick it up if the folks aren't happy either. And when you talk about leads generated by employees, they convert 7 times faster. When your employees talk organically about the company brand on their platforms, they enjoy wider reach and connection than the company channels. There are all these metrics that can tell you as a leader that happy, engaged people hit straight to your bottom line. So do the research, find out where the gaps are, and plan to fill it. Because if your people are not on board, you're going to feel it in the bottom line, and the customers are going to pick it up in a heartbeat.
I just want to pick up on that thing that you said when employees have leads generated by employees convert 7 times faster. I think in the time that you said that to finishing what you're saying, Tim put out a blog about that.
I'm sure.
But
Kerry-Ann, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Which is, so in terms of the internal marketing process, what you've done is you've gone out to the employees, you've created a conversation with them, you understand their needs just like we would understand our prospects or customers. What about some of the internal processes? Because I work for a company, for example, where they said, we want you to post on social media. But if you read the social media policy document, it pretty much said that if you post on social media, we'll fire you. So we always had this balance between don't look at the document, don't look at the document, and I hope they don't raise the document, because actually the processes didn't actually suit what was being said. So what do you do about that?
Exactly. And that goes back to the whole issue of mitigating the risk that brands know is a reality when you have employees who are on social media talking about various things. So it starts again once you're fixing the challenges, to go back to the question that Adam would have posed initially, but you're also setting up the guardrails. So you need to look back at your social media policy. Let's keep it real. You have to look back at your social media policy. What does the policy say? Is it a policy that's really bent on shutting folks down, or is it one that empowers people? Again, bearing in mind that you need to have the strictures and structures in place to make sure that the brand stays safe and your employees stay safe as well, which is also another concern. So starting there, you want to offer things like personal branding training. It's something that we've done as well, where there are some employees who want to be visible on social media. They're not sure how to go about it. You want to partner with them. We've brought in personal branding experts to talk about how do employees see themselves as a brand, how do they show up online, what conversations they'd like to have. And again, you're building that partnership. When employees see that here's a company that's really excited about helping them to show up in an authentic, effective, valuable way online, we're providing them with the tools to be able to do that. You're also getting the quid pro quo, where they're like, hey, I'm obviously part of an organization that's passionate about people and how they show up. So personal branding training is something I recommend, as well as making sure that you have the policies and procedures in place to keep everybody, including the valuable brand, safe.
We had a guy on here from SAP, and he said their policy was don't be stupid.
I love that. I love that.
And I know you could argue it's a little bit short, but
I love it.
But I think that's the one of the things when we're talking about protecting the brand, right? That it's a risk mitigation tool, right? We have to protect it, but when there's a risk, it also presents an opportunity for us to trust our people. And so when we say, don't be stupid, okay, if you're having a terrible day and you feel like ranting, maybe don't put it on social. But I think there has to be that balance between I feel like when we're talking about protecting the brand, it makes me feel like it's closed off to me. This is what I can say, and I don't actually get to participate in the building of that. And that to me breaks our belonging. And so how can I be an advocate when I don't belong to this? I'm just the reporter of it. How excited am I going to get about that? Probably not that.
Exactly, which is why I went back to the point about how are we empowering our people to use their voices, so it's giving them the tools, it's having the conversation, it's expressing the fact that we're open to this, guys. It's not a problem, feel free to use your voices. This is how we're going to support you in doing that. I wanted to jump back to another point as well, which I know is going to be controversial, because when we talk about external marketing, we talk about finding our ideal customer that we want to serve, and we're very deliberate about finding our customer. I contend, and again, here's a controversial part, I contend that in internal marketing, I also recommend that companies be deliberate about the kinds of employees that they engage as well, or the types of prospective employees. If as a brand you have a particular value system, so let's say our brand value is equity and inclusion. If you're going to be hiring someone where there's evidence to show, maybe through their Instagram profile, that they have anti-Semitic views, maybe they're not the person to hire, and there's no amount of social media policy or training that's going to change that about them, because that's just who they are. And so my recommendation is with companies, when you're having this broad conversation of telling your employees, hey, we want everybody to use their voices. This is how we're going to empower you to do that. We encourage that. Make sure that all those voices are coming from the same place in terms of how they feel, what their values are, so that you're a little bit more comfortable. I mean, I'm an example. I work with an organization, but I also have my personal own podcast. My company has nothing to do with it. They're comfortable with it because they know that I represent the brand. I come from the same value system as the values that the brand espouses. So they're not nervous when I'm recording in the privacy of my own room, because they know that Kerry-Ann is singing from the same hymn sheet. So that's my recommendation to brands as well.
So that's the second time I've heard you essentially say be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And this time it's be intentional with hiring. And it kind of seems obvious. You probably don't want to hire somebody who's posting anti-Semitic views, especially if you're going to advocate for branding and personal branding and so on. But what about hiring somebody who's saying nothing? What about somebody who's not active on social media versus those that are? Is that now part of your hiring equation?
Good question, Rob.
That's a great question. And the truth is, not everybody is going to want to be online. So I certainly don't recommend that companies put that as a kind of qualifier for folks to be hired, or even to say, well, I'm not seeing you online, so because there's this question mark, I'm going to stay far. What I would suggest, and I've seen companies do this too, I know Zappos, even before they were acquired, they used to talk about this. What's your recruiting process like? What's your hiring process? Are you incorporating ways that allow you to see the person that you are interviewing beyond just the interview room? So Zappos would have spoken about the fact that their assessment process included everybody: the security guard, the parking attendant, the receptionist, the doorman. The HR would get feedback from them. So they're not just looking at the person who is presenting a lovely picture in the interview room. They're getting feedback from the parking attendant. Was this person pleasant when they saw you? Were they miserable? Were they friendly or not? Because those are the situations where you're gonna get the person at their most authentic, because they don't believe they're on show. They're getting that feedback, and it helps them to make the right decisions to hire people, again, who are either aligned with the brand or not.
So how is internal marketing done? How is it done right? And what does good look like?
So what good looks like, first of all, is brands who are clear about their why and their purpose as a brand. Why do they exist? Who do they serve, and who represents them? So it starts there. How it's done well too is that, again, you have to start from a place of research, understanding the people that you have. How are they empowered to deliver on the brand promise? How are they engaged in the brand? Do they have that kind of an emotional connection to the brand? Like Tracy, do they get excited when they talk about the brand? If that doesn't exist, then you're going to have to work with your people team and your leadership team to do the work to make the changes to make that happen. Once you're comfortable that you have the culture that you need to deliver on an awesome value proposition as you've promised to the customer, then you're going to have to do your marketing on the inside. There is promotion in internal marketing. What are the promotion strategies and communication strategies that are going to work for your team? In my company, we've tried e-newsletters. It didn't really work too well because, readership, sometimes folks aren't engaged. So we've done things like internal podcasts. How do you do things like we had a thing, the social ambassador of the week, where we had team members who were doing stuff on social media or representing the brand online, and we would send out an advisory to the entire company. We're going to acknowledge Alex. He's our social ambassador for the week, and we give a clip of maybe something he would have posted on LinkedIn, and he gets an Amazon gift voucher, and he gets celebrated. Or there are team members who are creating content, maybe as the official company channel. We collaborate with them and we put them out in our official channels to give them exposure. They feel part, as Tracy said, of the process of building building the brand. So do your internal promotions and communication, share that with the world, and again, empower them to be able to use their voices. And, you know, back to Adam's question, some people will need that content boost to start. You know, I don't want to knock companies, because we've come from a place where we've had members of the sales team who want to put themselves out there because it helps them with their targets. They need help with content. We give them some templates that they can play with and make their own. That's a thing too. But at the heart of it, it's starting from culture, doing your promotions, and then making sure that you're empowering your team to be the voice for themselves and also for the brand.
So it's
Those frameworks
complex.
that you're talking about, I call that social enablement.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to make a note of that right now.
Steal it.
So yeah, steal it. So what you're describing does sound very complex, and it spans, no doubt, many different leaders across an organization. You know, what I'm hearing is it's incredibly important that the individual involved is totally bought in, even if leadership thinks this is the right thing to do. But who typically makes the decision within an organization about, well, we need to do this, we need to do internal marketing?
I found that that decision comes from many different places. As a marketer, I would like to think it often comes from marketing, in the sense that marketers recognize that, going back to that point I made earlier about when your employees are sharing content, that organic reach that they enjoy is going much farther and is far more effective than the official company messages, because people expect you to talk great about your company, right? Or the company they expect the company to talk great about itself. But when employees are just organically just sharing that I love the company that I work with, kind of like what Tracy was talking about, then people tend to believe that more, and marketers recognize that you can't buy that kind of engagement and reach. There's just no way. So it typically starts there. But where I think the gap falls or happens, Alex, is that I think even as marketers, we're so trained to look at the customer, we forget that the employees can be our greatest allies. And so you'll have HR, because even in my own journey as a podcaster talking about internal marketing, HR has actually gotten very excited about internal marketing as well. And I think what companies probably need to recognize is that that partnership between HR and marketing is where the sweet sauce is, because HR is people, HR is culture, but they don't necessarily have the marketing skill set or expertise to make that happen and to create that mindset and behavioral shift. And of course, internal comms, understanding how to do internal communications very well. I think that's where that triad of collaboration, I think, can make really internal marketing really powerful. But usually I find it's a toss-up between marketing and HR, who see that as a solid need in the company.
Right, so you talk about this and it sounds so straightforward and obvious, and yet most of the organizations that I have ever spoken to are deliberately deaf toward this. You know, everybody sits in their silo, and I'm just sweeping generalizations, but everybody sits in their silo doing their job, keeping their head down. My job as an internal comms or an external comms person is to create literature that Alex, as the marketing director, will then distribute through our email marketing tool to people, and then that's my job done. At no point do I stand back and look at the bigger picture and say, yeah, the problem is nobody's reading this stuff that I'm producing. And Alex doesn't say, actually, we need to try something entirely different, because he said to the chief executive, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sending out, to your point, Kerry, an e-newsletter every single week, month, quarter, whatever. And, you know, we're talking about a seismic transformation within a company. You know, we're looking at the culture, we're looking at the happiness of the employees, we're looking at the remuneration package for people, we're looking at their job roles, we're looking at how the brand is absorbed by those people and how that helps motivate them to behave a certain way or not. We're talking about how we have conversations with those people. What's their preferred channel for conversations? What's their preferred tone of voice and narrative? How are we listening to those people in return? Because otherwise it becomes a broadcast, not a conversation with people. And this is these. Any one of these is a 6-month project for an organization to implement. This whole thing is like, we're going to take the corporate structure of your company with 100, 1,000, 100,000 people. We're going to throw it away. We're going to start again from scratch, and we're going to do it right this time. Because it reminds, or it smacks to that old joke about the guy driving down the street and he's lost, and he pulls over and he says to somebody, "Excuse me, can you direct me how to get to Main Street?" And the person says, "Well, I wouldn't start from here." And that's where most companies are at, isn't it? They're in this place where everything is broken. We know that because we're often at the sales end of things, and I can count on the fingers of one hand each month the number of people I talk to that say pipeline is not a problem for us. Everybody has a pipeline problem. Everybody has a visibility problem. Everybody has a credibility problem. And these are just more misfortune heaped on these companies. So how do you zip this up in such a way that companies can go, you know what, that's what we need to do. We need to completely transform who we are and how we are.
Yes. And Adam, I feel your pain, because even as an internal marketing podcaster, because I've been doing this for a couple of years. When I started, there was no other podcast like it. I may have seen a few marketing podcasts, may have had an episode talking about internal marketing, but there was no other podcast that had this as a focus. And even just being on LinkedIn, if you look at LinkedIn, tells you hashtags, how many people are following a particular hashtag. For internal marketing, I think maybe by now it's about 100 people who are following the internal marketing hashtag. Employee advocacy, it's well over 1,000. Just to show you, it really is a conversation that's not happening enough. And I think what perhaps seems to be happening is, even as I've looked at the landscape of content that's been generated about internal marketing, it's been largely academic, Adam. A lot of even the handful of books you see being sold talking about internal marketing, for the most part, they've been academic and they remain in the university walls, and they've not made the transition to the business space. And I think what needs to happen is that I think more research needs to be done to talk about and look into companies who are and have been doing it very well. And the measurements and the metrics need to be a part of that conversation as well. So there are certain metrics when you talk about everybody has a pipeline problem. If more companies looked at, well, let's look at the leads generated by our employees, look at those generated through our official marketing channels, and track the velocity. How quickly were they converting, and compare the two? Measuring things like earned media from what your employees are sharing and posting relative to what you'd have to pay to get that same kind of reach. I think far more work needs to be done where companies are making that comparison around what does it look like for a company that's doing this kind of internal engagement and advocacy well versus those who are not. Because at the end of the day, it's numbers that drive. If we're here to make money, how are companies who are doing this making money versus those who are not? And I think the answer is going to be clear, but far more work needs to be done. And I'm certainly personally committed to continuing to drive that conversation.
Yeah.
So
have you
can
thought
it be
about
done?
doing those measurements in your organization, Kerry-Ann?
So we do the best that we can. And I'm glad you asked that question, Tim, because my organization isn't perfect either, right? Because what tends to happen, and Adam made the point about silos. As for instance, in my company, you have marketing, and then internal comms is in HR. So it's a constant conversation about how do we come together and bring those elements together, because internal comms on the HR is really about culture. Marketing is working with business development and sales for revenue generation. So it's how do we build it together? And we have not figured it out entirely. So what we've had to do is things like being deliberate about those meetings that we're having. Do we engage each other other regularly? Do we partner on particular initiatives? And how sometimes internal comms literally just has to empower us to do things. So even that internal podcast is driven through us. They have internal podcasts as well. Ours are for a different purpose, but we just try to continue to keep those communication lines open. In terms of the metrics, it's about the tools. And I know that there are some employee advocacy platforms available. Not all companies are able to invest in those whenever they'd like. But for us, we're getting much better at measurement, but it's still a long road to get there, I must admit.
And do you find that there needs to be some sort of common language? And as you said, you need to start talking to each other by attending certain meetings. So it's making sure that you've got that culture going on between the different departments.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And I think that, well, for JMMB, our culture is solid in the sense that based on our brand, we're a brand, our founding value is love, and our people are very happy working there. When we did our research, for example, people were happy to work there. They were proud to say they worked with JMMB, but they just didn't understand what made JMMB great relative to the competition. So when we asked them in the surveys, if someone came up to you and said, why should I save and invest in a financial institution like with JMMB versus the competition, they confessed they didn't really know how to do that. They didn't know what made us great. They weren't clear on what our value proposition is. And so what we found is that it was education was the gap that we needed to solve as far as our employees understanding the value prop, the products and the services. So for every company, the diagnosis is different, and so the prescription would have to be different, but we're just continuing to press through on that journey for sure.
Okay. Sorry,
Does it have to be done in series, as in clean the house and the policies and then work on internal marketing, or can it be done in parallel? Yeah, our people aren't really happy with our time off policy, but they love our volunteerism policy, and this is where we start our advocacy program.
Great question, Rob. I think you just have to make that decision based on what you know needs to be fixed. So I'm glad you raised a perfect example. If they love the volunteer program, but maybe they're not happy with the PTO policy, then that may be an opportunity to decide, well, are we comfortable empowering our employees to use their voices? Again, they're going to be doing it anyway. But if you find that there are things that are working really well that your team members love and are happy talking about, then you can feel comfortable. I would say, though, that still do that temperature check. You still want to make sure that you do that temperature check internally to make sure that generally your team member is happy with the product, which is the culture, the job that they're in, the leadership. Because if they're not satisfied with the product, then they can't make that recommendation. They can't refer your employee. Check out your employee net promoter score. Let's start there. How satisfied are your employees to recommend your company as a place to work? If that net promoter score ain't shocking, then don't.
But it's interesting that you said JMMB isn't perfect. We still have a long way to go in some of these things, and then you extolled the virtues. I love it because of this. I love it because of this. And actually, there's a true authenticity to that, isn't there? I'm working at company X. To be frank with you, we've got a dreadful policy for childcare. We don't give employees any support at all, but we do have volunteering, and we do have this, and we do have generous car purchase schemes and whatever else that they can get behind. Because it's like if somebody says to you, hi Kerry-Ann, how are you today? You say, I'm a bit tired, and then you go on to say, this is really good and I'm really loving this and I'm really looking forward to this. You don't say, well, to be frank, things aren't really that good. And this, because people just tend not to behave that way in a social situation.
That's right. That's right. And no company is perfect. Let's keep it real. I mean, I spoke about Southwest earlier. It's always been an awesome brand with an awesome culture. But look what happened 6 months ago when they had that awful system breakdown that put them on every news channel across the world almost. So no company is perfect. But do your employees trust your intentions? Do they believe that you really are doing your best to walk the talk that you say you have, or the values that you say you have as a company? company. And if generally the temperature is great, they would recommend your company as a place to work, then yeah, you got something to start. And I would say start there. Absolutely.
I,
And I
I
think
love the
I'm
fact that you
hearing
said
like
about intentions. You said if they trust your intentions, and I
Yes.
think that is kind of like Tim said about SAP's policy. Don't be stupid.
Yes.
That's the equivalent, isn't it? It's like
Mhm.
it's not right. I'm not the perfect husband, but I imagine that I'm better than some.
Oh,
And
yes.
and that's the point, isn't it? If your heart's in the right place, it's a really good starting point.
Yes, indeed.
And I think it maybe allows you to see those weaknesses, because all companies will have that. It's like why SWOT analysis exists, right?
Mhm.
So when you can identify, okay, our employees are not happy about this, that is a risk. And if you're empowering people to use their voice and they're unhappy with their PTO, you might expect someone to share something about how they're unhappy with their PTO, or they wish they had more time to go on vacations like this, right?
Yeah.
But so while it's then not a like, okay, we're going to tell people that they can't talk about PTO on social media, it's something that we can expect. It's something we can talk about. It's something we can explore. And if our intentions as a company are to make this the best possible place. And it's kind of, I always say this about the government, right? Like you can't make every single person happy in a country with a policy, right? It's not a thing. But if we have the intention of exploring of how we can do the best we can with the resources we have and the funding we have to provide a intentional place for our employees to show up, that's what helps people say yes. Okay, is this place perfect? No. Do I trust their intentions? Yes. One of the questions I have, Kerry-Ann, because you talked about using your voice a lot, and I know when we talk about advocacy, this is about using your voice externally to promote, but how important is that to balance with that using our voice internally so that we feel heard, that there are resources for us to voice our concerns to before we go and voice a concern to the market?
Right. So that's again part of the product component of internal marketing, which is your culture, your company. Do people feel heard? Do people feel valued? Do they feel they have a voice internally where they can air concerns? Because if you can't clean your house internally as a family, then people will, in frustration, they're gonna go outside. They're gonna vent about it. They're gonna probably try and gather an army of supporters to come and advocate for them. So definitely you have to make sure that internally people feel that there is that system in place where they can fix stuff as a family. And when we have a problem, can we duke it out inside, and come to an alignment and kiss and make up? Yeah, we'll be good. There's less of a likelihood that they're going to go outside about it. Yeah.
I love that term, duke it out. Is that put up your dukes?
And you know what? It kind of reminds me, Tracy, as you were talking, there's another concern that a lot of companies have is that, if we give our employees an opportunity to use their voices, you're talking about your employees building their personal brands outside. And a big concern that companies have is, well, if my people are building their personal brands, then they're going to be poached, right? Other companies are going to want to come and offer them a better opportunity. And that's another reason why companies tend to want to muzzle employees, because they figure if we put our best people on LinkedIn to talk and to give valuable content, and they're going to be poached. Again, it goes back to another great outcome of internal marketing, which is a great employer brand. And I always tell companies, don't worry about it. Sometimes there will be a better opportunity for your people to take advantage of in another company, whether they're putting themselves out on LinkedIn or not, it's going to happen. But what also happens when you have great internal marketing and great employee advocacy is that you're building an awesome employer brand that attracts great talent. So even if you lose folks, you'll have no problem attracting great folks to replace those people, because you've done such a good job of positioning yourself as an awesome place to work. People are looking on saying, hey, I want to work with Lego. And then they're going to go after it whenever Lego says, hey, we got a vacancy. You're going to have no problem filling it.
So
And
you've
I would
alluded.
assume that also means the likelihood of people leaving
True.
is low, right? Like,
True.
and maybe that's too then showing there's probably employees who care more about their paycheck than the experience of working in a company, and you can't necessarily control all those things.
Correct. At JMMB, we have a term called returning residents, right? So you have people who would have left for whatever reason, and a few years later, they're right back because they're like, the grass wasn't as greener. And sometimes maybe it was just stage in life. They just thought another opportunity was great. And we welcome them back with open arms because sometimes they honestly go out there and they're like, boy, yeah, let me come right back. And we call them returning residents, and we're happy to welcome them back too.
You've alluded to a couple of potential answers to this. Earned media and retention and recruitment. But the $1 million question now is, how do I get leadership to buy in and adopt this?
Wow, that is a great question, because internal marketing won't happen without leadership buying, like most things. I think that it has to come from a place of, I mentioned earlier, bringing those metrics together that show how does what we do from an internal marketing and employee standpoint impact the bottom line. So there are particular metrics that can tell us how to do that. So you mentioned a few, raised a few there, Rob. Earned media, lead generation, lead conversion, lead velocity. I would have also mentioned your employee net promoter score. You can also look at things like your productivity levels, performance levels. Are your top performers leaving, or are they staying? Looking at those types of metrics. Are you attracting top performers? Those are the things that I think you really need to do a great job of putting those numbers in front of your leadership team so that they see the financial and the numerical and the productivity impact of what a company looks like if they don't have a great culture, great internal marketing, and employee advocacy in place.
There's that intentional word again, collecting data intentionally and attributing it to the internal marketing and so on, because ultimately, I, as a salesperson, if I close the deal, it's because I did it. It had nothing to do with the fact that, oh yeah, the internal marketing caused the promotion, caused the so on. So maybe you have to take some liberties too as the internal marketer.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a great example you shared about the salesperson, because it's a similar conversation that we have as marketers, where sometimes the sales folks will want to take all the credit, and the marketers said, well, do you think that could happen without a great brand? Hello, try selling something if you don't have a great brand behind you. I mean, one of the things I also recommend to folks is go straight to your customer and ask them the question, how did you hear about us? Why did you choose to do business with us versus choosing to do business with the competition? When those customers give you the answers, that's the thing, you're going to see some light bulbs come off, because they're going to say sometimes, in fact, word of mouth. Boy, I chose you because my neighbor does business with you and she's had a great experience. Or my grandmother opened my first savings account with you and she's had a great experience, and that's why I'm here. Or I saw your team member posting valuable content on LinkedIn and I thought, hey, this must be a great company. I decided to check you guys out. Those are the answers that you're probably going to see coming out that speak to the fact that you have a great culture and great internal marketing, and it's coming out in how your business is flourishing as well.
So we are coming up to the top of the hour. I wanted to thank everyone in the chat for the fantastic questions and fantastic insights. Wanted to share this last one that Robert had posted. Individuals' glow shines on the company they work for. I think that's a great recap of what we've been talking about here, especially the tail end. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone for the contributions. Kerry-Ann, how can we follow you going forward? How can we hear more from you?
Oh, my pleasure. So, first of all, the Internal Marketing Podcast. If you Google the Internal Marketing Podcast, the website is going to come right up to the top. And I'm also, the podcast is also on all the popular podcasting platforms. So, feel free to listen in there. I welcome everybody to join and give feedback. But also, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn baby as well. So, I'm there on LinkedIn. I post content quite frequently. And so, I love connecting and meeting and having conversations with great people there. So either way, I welcome everyone to join the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
to
you very
the
much.
audience. Thank you, Kerry-Ann, for a fantastic show.
Thanks, everybody.
I know we've already been cut off by LinkedIn, but I'm just going to pop this up there anyway. If you have something to say, if you'd like to be featured on as a guest on the show, please look us up at digitaldownload.live. Kerry-Ann, again, thank you so much. I look forward to listening to more episodes of your podcast as well.
Thanks,
Brilliant.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Great one. Bye.